So we will start the meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District School Committee is being conducted remotely. Agenda items listed are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Not all items listed may, in fact, be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting is being recorded by CTSB and will be broadcast. The meeting is also being recorded by the committee recorder, other members of the committee, and members of the audience. Minutes will be transcribed and made public and posted to our website once approved. So let's start. We have a couple things under the superintendent's report, and then we'll move right into the business of the day. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll try to be quick on this because I know most people are here for the other part of the meeting. Just to remind the school committee, previously you voted, because we're starting remotely, to enable us to participate in athletics. On the recommendation of the athletic director and the principal, I'm having us start the fall season with both golf and cross country. We'll follow the appropriate MIA guidelines around that. And at a future meeting, I could tell you more about that. But it's things like staggered starts and social distancing and the like. So we will start with golf and cross country. Any questions on that?
Peter, this is Bill. In relation to cross country, how about the entrance of the building? Are the student athletes going to be in the building? Because we're having students come in the building October 5th, and it seems kind of illogical to have athletic students in the building before then.
Yeah, I'll give you another update, Bill, next week, but I don't think that's part of the plan, is to have students in the building.
Okay.
Okay.
Bill, just so you know, I have a boatload of questions about the two sports he listed and other sports which are being cut. So I want to, when we have more time as a committee, to really delve into all those issues. So I'm with Peter on putting that discussion off till a point when we have more time.
Okay, and that's on the next agenda for next week, which I had sent, or Doreen sent earlier today. Okay, so we'll go into that in much more detail next week.
Jason, did you want to say something?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, so none of these sports are going to have signups or start between now and next week.
Correct.
The two sports that you proposed.
Yeah, no,
Right, so we'll have nothing will begin between now and next meeting.
right.
Maya regulation, nothing can start before September 16th. Practice, nothing can start before September 16th by law right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So that was that. The second thing is a second reading of our new policy on face coverings. I sent it around to the school committee in the packet, and a couple changes were made. I deleted in the second paragraph "on school grounds," and the second part of that, "even when social distancing is observed," and I added specific circumstances allowing removal noted below. And then I took out at the last paragraph on the first page is staff members are responsible for their own face coverings, right? So the district will provide them, and people may use their own ones if they're appropriate. And then we'll have a separate procedure around what's appropriate and not appropriate, but it's not in the policy.
So before we take a vote on this or have a discussion, I do want to do a roll call so I know who's here. So Molly Thomas.
Here.
Jason St. Peter.
Here.
John.
Yep.
Diane Singer. Andy Potter.
Here.
Ann Hutchinson.
Here.
Bill Fields.
Here.
Rich Mahoney.
Here.
So the only one so far that's not here is Diane. So do I have a motion on this second reading?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
So I have a motion to approve by Rich, a second by Bill. Discussion, school committee discussion. Hearing none, it's a roll call vote. All votes in remote session are roll call. Molly Thomas,
Yes.
Jason St. Peter,
Yes.
John Steven,
Yes.
Andy Potter,
Aye.
Norma Foreman.
Ann Hutchinson,
Here, yes, aye.
all of the above. Bill Fields,
Yes.
Rich Tahoney,
Yes.
and yes, it's a unanimous vote. Peter?
Okay, so thank you for that. So the only other thing on my thing is there's a personnel report in there. I mentioned, or a couple things. So I mentioned Jerry Curtin's retirement. He worked for us, and thank you with your help on the other thing. So we appreciate Jerry. And two new middle school hires, Hillary Bashara, who's our new middle school nurse, and Wendy Soames, who's a middle school humanities teacher. The rest of it are mentoring. And then Haley Cordy, former student who worked for us as a paraprofessional for a time, is leaving us, so we appreciate the work she did too. Okay. So I think that's it. And Steve, I'd hand it back to you to set some ground rules for our public hearing.
So we're going to get started. We will open the public hearing, but I will go through the rules and some explanations first. We will start with an explanation of the request to rename the school. And I have the list of participants. We'll do that. We'll unmute them and allow them to make a presentation. So just as a clarification, how did we get here tonight? There's some confusion because there were town meeting votes, and people think that the town meeting votes were all that was necessary. Those town meeting votes were advisory. They were non-binding. The school committee is the only body in our district that can change the name of a school. So what will happen tonight is once we have the explanation of the request, we will then go into public comments. So let me just explain that right now. And we talked a little bit about this before the meeting, those of you who weren't there. In order to speak publicly, you need to use the raise your hand feature on Zoom. And you'll be recognized in the order that you put your hand up. If you're not on a computer, but you're on a phone, if you hit *6, that'll allow you to raise your hand. And if you hit *9, that will unmute you. So tonight, my expectation is we're going to have a very respectful discussion. Each public speaker is going to be limited to 3 minutes. What I'm going to ask is, similar to a town meeting, please don't repeat what others have said. The school committee received over 350 emails, mostly in the last 48 hours, and a petition. I know this school committee, and I know they've read
They're still
every email. Excuse me?
they're still coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't need to read your emails, but you can highlight what you've said. In the order of speakers, the first set of speakers will be the residents of the 3 towns. So when you're recognized to speak, you say your name and your address. Those will be the first set. Then if time permits, we'll allow school choice and tuition students and parents and out-of-town staff. The discussion will go for probably no more than an hour, because I'm sure it's going to get very repetitious at that point. So I will give you warnings as we get close to an hour. And what I would ask is, it's not required that you take up to 3 minutes. That's the maximum. There's just so many points people can make, and I understand people want to be heard. So let's see how many people we can get through in at least the hour. So I'm going to ask everyone to mute themselves, because there is a lot of background noise and we can't have that. It's just going to slow things down. So if everyone would mute themselves, that would make things a lot easier here. Okay, so let's get started with the presentation. And Gwen, are you there?
Thank you.
There's no motion before the committee right now.
Well, I
There's nothing
realize that.
before the committee.
Right, what we're gonna do, Rich, is there won't be a motion until after the public comment. Once they make the presentation, then, and we can discuss this right now. I'm gonna open the public hearing. They'll make their public comment. Then we'll close the public hearing and then we'll have a motion. That's usually how we run a public hearing. If you want to do it a different way, I am totally open to it.
I just don't think as a matter of process, we can have a public hearing unless there's a matter before the committee. You have an application, because nothing's happened. I did read I read a proposed motion at our last meeting, but specifically said that I was not making the motion, but I wanted the matter put on the agenda, followed to be by a public hearing.
And that motion has been revised at this point. It seems like last,
So Rich, do you want to read that motion?
I want to make the motion, and I'm going to do it right
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
Whereas the Berkshire Hills Regional School District, comprised of the towns of Great Barrington, Stockbridge, and West Stockbridge, operates a regional middle school providing education to 5th through 8th graders at 313 Monument Valley Road in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Whereas Berkshire Hills Regional School District is entrusted by its member towns to educate their children and challenge them to be courageous learners, educated citizens, and individuals of integrity. Whereas W.E.B. Du Bois was born and raised in Great Barrington and graduated from Searles High School, a Great Barrington public high school and a predecessor school to the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. Whereas W.E.B. Du Bois received his Master's of Arts from Harvard University in 1891 and became the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard University in 1895. Whereas W.E.B. Du Bois was one of America's greatest activists and scholars, authoring many fiction and nonfiction books, including The Souls of Black Folk, served as a professor at Atlanta University, and co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, otherwise known as the NAACP, in 1909. Whereas W.E.B. Du Bois's life and legacy is an inspiration for courageous learners, engaged citizens, and individuals' integrity. And whereas the member towns of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District are governed by town meetings, and the 2019 Great Barrington Annual Town Meeting, the 2019 Stockbridge Annual Town Meeting, and the 2019 West Stockbridge Annual Town Meeting all overwhelmingly voted to name the middle school the W.E.B. Du Bois Regional Middle School. I move that the regional middle school located at 313 Monument Valley Road in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, hereby be named the W.E.B. Du Bois Regional Middle School.
I second that motion.
I have a motion by Rich, a second by Andy. So I need a motion now to open the public hearing.
motion to open the public hearing.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
So I have a motion by Sean, a second by Andy. It's a roll call vote. Molly,
Yes.
Jason,
aye.
Sean,
Yep,
Diane, are you on?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Andy Potter,
Aye.
Ann,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
and I. So we have opened the public hearing. The first part of this, and don't raise your hands yet, we're not ready to start that. The first part of this will be a presentation. Gwen, I think your members can unmute themselves. If they can't, I will unmute them. There's 5 co-hosts, so between us, we'll all unmute them.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off, and is it okay that I just maybe call on the next person so they know?
Yeah, that would be the most organized way. Just identify yourself.
Okay, so thank you. Hi, I'm Gwendolyn Van Sant. I live at 202 State Road in Great Barrington. I'm the CEO and founding director of Bridge. I'm the vice chair of the Great Barrington Du Bois Legacy Committee and a parent of a middle schooler in Berkshire Hills Regional School District. So I have something to read for you today, but first I just want to thank the school committee and all the efforts in supporting having this community conversation and prioritizing this among everything else you're holding at this time of the school year. So thank you very much. So here we go. Education and work are the levers to uplift a people, says Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Our presentation and discussion here tonight is to uplift the work of a global scholar who stood for education for all, health, justice, equity, liberation, and fulfillment for all. Dr. Du Bois wanted us to value progressive and brave education, to explore truth, be discerning and critical thinkers, and to embrace the journey in our own humanity towards these truths. He embodied growth and lifelong learning. He stood for what education should be and what a teacher should model in terms of what we talk about now as a growth mindset. He was constantly acquiring data, shifting perspective, and sharing knowledge accordingly. We as a community have been working diligently for decades to honor Dr. W.B. Du Bois, with the baton being passed around from scholars to activist scholars, alongside students, clergy, delegates, artists, and many other leaders working towards justice. We all know the first attempt to name the new school was contentious for our community and left us with conflict, hurt, confusion, guilt, and shame. We don't need to revisit that tonight or return to it. It left a scar that we've been massaging to heal for the better part of 2 decades. No matter the project or small group of leaders working on this, we have been chipping away at the bias inherent in not wanting to name a school after this Black scholar. The schools we do have in this country are named after Black scholars, and they're often in neighborhoods that don't look like ours in Berkshire County. This is a bias that we are confronting. The bias against Dr. Du Bois, I believe, is rooted in not understanding Dr. Du Bois as a Black man who did not see a future and livelihood for his people in U.S. capitalism. And with pages of history in between, he made his decision to join U.S. Communist Party and ultimately retire in peace in Ghana. The bias against Dr. Du Bois is rooted also, I believe, in not valuing or possibly comprehending the quality, impact, and sheer volume of his work, especially in his day and time. This work of our native son, who is revered across the country and the world. Most people do not know or choose to remember that Du Bois broke ground for the NAACP, for Black scholars at Harvard, in the field of sociology, journalism, human rights, and education. We as community activists from several groups have been diligently educating our community so that all of our students and residents have access to this knowing and the shared trailblazing legacy. A few years back, community members, including some members of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District faculty, suggested we consider renaming the school as part of the 150th birthday anniversary of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. We as a committee decided to wait and hold the 150th celebration in an intentional way where we honored community education and celebrated Du Bois's 4 values of progressive education, economic justice, racial equality, and civil rights. And the following year, we began this discussion. It was decided to not have it be a committee-led discussion, but a community-based grassroots one. And so Bridge activists, allies, and partners embarked on conversations with the school district. We landed on the idea that we needed a majority vote in favor of tonight's.
You want to read Peekahoo?
From the
No, what book do you want to read, honey?
Someone needs to mute themselves, please.
We organized, held forums, and had that vote in spring 2019, as you just heard from Rich. It was resoundingly positive. Dr. John Horan approached me in June of 2020 in the midst of the Black Lives Matter uprisings, offering to support bringing this effort to completion. And so we went before the school committee and select board and Great Barrington Du Bois Legacy Committee, and we garnered full support. Now it's time to have this community dialogue civilly about Dr. Du Bois's legacy and why every child in our district should be proud to be educated in a town where Dr. Du Bois was born. Every faculty, staff, and administrator should aspire to the lessons Dr. Du Bois has taught us on education. Every community member should learn from the model of civic engagement and care and love for the Berkshires that Dr. Du Bois showed. Each of us tonight have a different message and voice to share, and we all promise to deeply listen to one another and also to stand for justice. I share this quote again from the Architectural Digest, as I did before the select board last month. According to Brent Leggs, Executive Director of the National Trust for Historic Preservation's African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, which aims to preserve Black historic sites across the U.S., it's time to replace the Confederate memorials with symbols that represent who we are as a culture now. Through meaningful dialogue, history, and the arts, our nation should explore how best to communicate the often overlooked contributions and examples of Black excellence and activism to demonstrate our collective and contemporary values in public spaces. We should use this moment to create a more inclusive American landscape and public space that fills gaps in this nation's civic identity. What if instead of statues of Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, and other Confederate leaders, there were statues of Harriet Tubman, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and other Black heroes? What if there were plaques dedicated to remembering the selling of enslaved people, the lynching of African Americans, and other atrocities committed against Black Americans? We collectively have a responsibility here tonight to honor voices and contributions like Dr. Du Bois. When we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, game time is not later, it's now. Now is a time to mute certain voices simply because, to not mute certain voices simply because they're different from our own. And also, now is the time to honor all of the Black leaders and all of the work happening in our community. I leave you with Du Bois's words, followed by a reading from one of his great-grandchildren. Dr. Du Bois says, "I've loved my work, I've loved people and my play, but always I have been uplifted by the thought that what I've done well will live long and justify my life. That what I have done ill or never finished can now be handed on to others for endless days to be finished, perhaps better than I could have done." So that's the end of my presentation, and thank you. So this is from Dr. W.B. Du Bois's great-great-grandson, Jeff Peck Jr. To whom it may concern, over 57 years after Du Bois's death, the country is still in the midst of healing from deep racial wounds and political divides. Du Bois's legacy is but one of many Black voices that has been left aside and shunned out of fear of embracing what many may see as a controversial figure. Despite some of the most contentious opinions about his socio-political views before his death, he remained an ardent Black voice until the very end, an example of what was possible for the American Negro during post-Reconstruction. He represented the actualized potentiality of Black intelligence, divested of the racist stereotypes, bias, and treatment of Black Americans, deeply embedded in this country. His legacy is no less American than any of our founding fathers, abolitionists, or civil rights leaders, or any of his contemporaries. Looking at America's ugly past and current trajectory, anyone could come away with an opinion that America has a capricious view of its own history, in which it can take pride in tearing down its Confederate monuments, but cannot embrace its most important figures like Dr. W.B. Du Bois. I have been elated to experience Great Barrington slowly start to accept and embrace his name, but it's not enough. He deserves far more. Allowing his name to have more recognition and awareness is the only right step forward. You owe it to him, you owe it to Great Barrington, you owe it to your country to prop up the brightest and most talented of Great Barrington. Any hesitancy towards using his name for any school is akin to treating his legacy as historical detritus. I absolutely urge you to consider the precedent you would set by allowing his name into the public consciousness. It is absolutely unacceptable that there's any idle thinking and ambivalence about using his name, yet there are numerous public schools named after slave owners. Even though his life has been intertwined with Ghana as his resting place, Great Barrington has an opportunity now to pride themselves on giving him his start and assisting in the development of his legacy. Please don't abandon him. Do not set a precedent that schools can retain the names of history's most abhorrent figures, but cannot embrace forgotten Black voices. Du Bois should be recognized as nothing less than one of the highest ideals of educated, developed, and consequential figures in the history of his country. This decision that you can make in giving his name to a middle school, and many other schools for that matter, can insist in paying back what he gave us all, pride. His perspective matters, his writing matters, his legacy matters, his life matters. All Black lives matter. Sincerely, Jeffrey Peck Jr., great-great-grandson of Dr. W.B. Du Bois. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you, school committee, for hearing everyone tonight. And I'm going to call on Stephanie Wright.
Okay, this is from his great-grandson. To me and so many others, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois represents knowledge and educational excellence, which is why it should be a no-brainer for his name to be honored at an educational institution within Great Barrington. The community in which he was born, the same community that afforded him the incredible education he obtained. W.E.B. Du Bois attended school in Great Barrington and was the only child in his family to complete high school. He was such a phenomenal scholar. Multiple churches agreed to contribute money to send him to college. At this time, it had to be quite intimidating, as he was one of the only Black students within the classroom setting. One of Du Bois's early dreams was to attend one of the most prestigious schools in the United States, Harvard University. Nonetheless, he was advised to forego Harvard and attend a historically Black college, Fisk University in Nashville. Still proud of their native son, the Great Barrington churches continued to fund and support Du Bois throughout his college years to cover tuition expenses. While attending Fisk, Du Bois taught at other colleges. He graduated from Fisk in a mere 3 years, and in 1888, he was awarded a full scholarship to Harvard, of which he accepted. Du Bois went on to become the first African American to earn a doctoral degree from Harvard. Think about that for a moment. Again, educational excellence. Even with that incredible accomplishment under his belt, Dr. Du Bois sought out to attend one of the world's top education centers, the University of Berlin. As I reflect, I remember that my own great-grandfather was able to attend college due to the generosity of the churches and generous people of Great Barrington. Similarly, Great Barrington townspeople were responsible for the early success of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Not only did Du Bois excel at Fisk and at Harvard, he was highly recognized for his brilliance in Berlin. Over the course of his lifetime, Dr. Du Bois wore many hats, including but not limited to an activist, author, civil rights leader, politician, humanitarian, and the list goes on and on. At minimum, Dr. Du Bois was a widely celebrated and extraordinary educator who stood for educational excellence, cared deeply about academics, and who greatly valued knowledge. These are values we should be proud of and hold of for others to carry on. For so many reasons, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois's name belongs on an educational institution in his own hometown, representing his care for education, something he continues to be widely recognized for to this day. No place is more deserving than the town that afforded him his first education, Great Barrington. Sincerely, Jeff Peck.
Thank you. That was Stephanie Wright. She's a member of our Du Bois Legacy Committee of Great Barrington. I'm going to call Vanessa LeGrand.
So good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you for attempting to hear me anyway. As I said, my name is Vanessa LeGrand. I live at 458 Monterey Road here in Great Barrington. I have 2 sons here that have gone to school here. I have 11 grandchildren and 1 great-grandson. My grandchildren go to school here, and God willing, with today's craziness going on, if my great-grandson isn't struck down early, he too will go to school here. But one of the things that is so important is that
Gwen, I'm afraid we've lost her.
Oh, no. All right, so hopefully we can come back to her.
Phone just got muted. Vanessa, your phone is muted.
So we lost you, Vanessa.
Thank you. Are we better? Did you
Yeah.
get,
Yeah.
was I muted the whole time?
No.
Okay, so for those that didn't hear, again, my name is Vanessa LeGrand. I live on Monterey Road at 458 here in Great Barrington. I've been here for 30 some odd years. My father was a pastor of a church here for 40 years until he passed away 5 years ago, Reverend Joseph Forte. only 6'8" Black man in Great Barrington that was respected, revered, and appreciated. And he appreciated this town and respected it for what he believed this town stood for. One of the things that's most important to me, I will repeat again, is that just as you name your children, you give your child a name when they're born that you and they will be proud of. The same is of their school. It rings in their hearts and their heads. The pride that they're able to carry when they speak their names, the names of the schools that they've been to, and the names of the people that supported them and helped to teach them in their schools. If not to you, it matters to me and it matters to them what the name of this school is. When I read the mission of Monument Valley, it seemed as though it was a no-brainer to me that everything that is in the mission is what Du Bois stood for. Valleys are great and so are monuments, but to have the name of a man that this town say is their hometown boy, so much to the point that we have a sign at the entrance of our town saying this is his hometown. Incidentally, did we send him to school? Yes, we did. Not us ourselves, but this town. And so if we truly are proud, show that. Du Bois stood for education. He stood through humility and persecution in order to receive an education that he deserved, as anyone else breathing air. And he did it not only for himself, but for his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, along with mine, to be able to see and know that they too deserve and are capable of receiving top-notch education and have the ability to carry that pride, not only of the degrees that they earn, but the name of the school that they came from. I question, if this were not a man of color, would this even be a conversation? I feel like I can answer that and say absolutely not, but I won't jump the gun. I'm asking you to examine yourselves, all that have to vote. When you're going to stop hiding behind whatever one finds to hide behind, that don't want to face truths, when they're going to flat out say that this man that was sent to college, W.E.B. Du Bois, and we lure people into this town bragging about this is a hometown boy, as though we're very proud of him. Let's show that. Uphold that. I urge each and every one of you, examine yourselves and ask why you wouldn't vote for this to happen. Lastly, but not least, I'm going to leave you with this quote. Now is the accepting time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It's today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It's today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime. So I ask you this, not just my children of brown skin, but your children that go to school with them. Should they not be proud of the name on the building that they're given education, and hopefully more education than I was given in these buildings with this systemic racism and things that have gone on for centuries? Do my babies have to learn about W.E.B. Du Bois on their own when they're 50, 60 some odd years old, like their mother, grandmother, great-grandmother? Please don't let that happen. Uplift the boy that we sent to school. Put his name on that building as it should be. Be proud of yourselves for doing it. I thank you for your time, and my time is up.
Thank you, Vanessa.
You're welcome.
I have Tim is next. He serves as the treasurer on the Du Bois Legacy Committee in Great Barrington. Tim LaGarish.
There. Yeah, I'd really just like to echo what Vanessa was saying. I'm a parent of 2 young children who will one day go to that middle school, and I would be so proud for them as a parent, and I know as I know my children, they'd be so proud to go to the W.E.B. Du Bois Middle School. So please school committee members, please make that a reality. It's important to me that their education includes a complete telling of our country's history, and it should include, if not feature, our local Berkshire civil rights leaders, of whom Du Bois is one of, and he's a globally recognized scholar. And what I've learned through the town festival, he's actually a saint in the Episcopalian Church. Who better to name a school after than Du Bois? Across the country, people are asking what monuments and statues should be coming down. And I think there's also a question that should be asked of what statues and monuments should be going up. And our school district has the opportunity to show that W.E.B. Du Bois is a person in this country that should be known, we should be proud of, and most certainly he deserves to be named after a school because of his scholarly work. So thank you for taking up this question and allowing this conversation. And I really urge you to support this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Clemente, are you here?
Yes, I just unmuted my.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, dear school committee and everybody present. My name is Clemente Saki. I live at 255 State Road here in Great Barrington, and I have my little 6-year-old girl goes to Muddy Brook. I am an immigrant as well, and I've been here for 13 years. And I have to say that I feel very welcome. I have felt very welcome since I arrived in this area, and part of the welcoming environment of this area has helped me to slowly thrive and start succeeding here in Great Barrington. And that is why today I just wanted to speak in support of naming the school after Mr. W.B. Du Bois. What I mean about the welcoming environment is that where I come from, which is poverty and extreme poverty, a child grows with tremendous obstacle that pushes against him. And I'm speaking from my own experience here. Everything you see around you becomes something antagonic against you. What you see on TV, what you see outside, what you hear people talk about, especially if you are poor and a person of color, which has been my experience. And when I came to the US and I came to this area, I remember once stopping, seeing the sign where Du Bois lived. And I love nature. I love walks. So after work one day, I just stopped, pulled over, and I went and took a walk. And I read about about his life, what was written there, and that he was born in town. In this town, and it gave me a feeling of, oh wow, this town is so diverse, is so welcoming. If this person wrote all this, and so on. And then I went on and I read about, what he wrote a little, not much. And what he wrote, I know some people, tag him as communism and things, but really what he wrote resonates to me as a Latino, as a person of color, and as a poor person who's gone through, many obstacles. And also as a Native American, which also I am from Guatemala. But also I have come to understand that not having that background, it's such a long gap to cross and understand understand what he spoke about. But I think as, a member of this community now, and I also happen to do activism in the community in support of immigrants, I have come to learn by talking to some people in the community that what's important is the support that we bring, the mutual support that we bring one another. And that mutual support sometimes is brought by that sign, by that landmark that I saw by the side of the road when I learned about Du Bois, or by other things that have happened to me here in this county. Per se, when Great Barrington, during the pandemic, decided to paint, some of the crosswalks on the streets as a rainbow color. These landmarks or these little actions or events speak about the values, the inclusiveness of the area where ones live. And I have felt welcomed. Thanks to this area, I am thriving, and thanks to all these landmarks. And I believe naming the school after Mr. Du Bois will add to these landmarks, to these welcoming signs, or to this welcoming signs of the area. That's all I wanted to say. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Clemente. I have to check in with the school committee. We have 2 more people, but I know we're over time, so I don't want to overuse our time. But what do I do about that?
Very briefly, because there's only one more on your list. But
yeah,
if they can just speak for a minute or so, because we did agree to last time.
All right. Thank you, everyone that's spoken, and thank you, school committee. So, Jeff, you're up.
Great, thanks. I'll keep this brief, everybody. So I want to speak to this from the perspective of somebody who grew up in Sheffield, just a couple miles south of Great Barrington. And I want to talk about how Dr. Du Bois has been erased in our town. This erasure has been along a reality in Great Barrington, going back to the original arguments over naming the elementary school after Dr. Du Bois and far beyond. It was still a reality when I was growing up just 10 miles south in Sheffield. I graduated from Mount Everett in 2011, and I didn't learn that Dr. Du Bois had been born in Great Barrington and was raised here until I moved away for college. I grew up spending a lot of my time in Great Barrington, and I never heard a word about Du Bois. That erasure was a tragedy then, and continuing it would be a travesty now, especially in this moment as we as a nation and community are being confronted with the reality of racial injustice in our country. It feels to me so important that we lift up Dr. Du Bois and honor him. I want us to be a town where Black Lives Matter, where we say that and we prove it. I've been honored to learn about Dr. Du Bois and his legacy through the annual Legacy Festival, and I've been proud of our town for its support of the festival and the establishment of the Du Bois Legacy Committee. Seeing the town finally begin to honor Dr. Du Bois has been a pleasure. Renaming the school after him would be another step to properly honor his legacy and to atone for its long erasure in our town. And I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes about education from Dr. Du Bois. Dr. Du Bois said, "Children learn more from what you are than what you teach." And so I want to ask all of us as a community to show our children who we are, to prove that Black Lives Matter here, and to honor Dr. Du Bois. And I ask you to vote in favor of this motion. Thank you very much.
Hi, at the last, I think our transition, Lee Davis wanted to join us, and I apologize, I didn't put her name on the list. And then after that, we are turning it back over to you, Steve. So thank you all for school committee for listening to us. And Thank you for your vote tonight. Lee?
Thank you very much. I'll keep this short. I just wanted to say that while we can't change history, we can certainly learn from history. And unfortunately, it pains me to say that America was born with racism. And basically, racism is systemic in our country. And for me, this is about racism. And I'm going to call it out. And I've looked at the comments on the names of people that have signed the petition. And I really feel that we have an opportunity to show our children that we're better than this, that we can learn from our history, that we're going to reach across the aisle and really use this as a learning opportunity. That, you know, we actually say, yes, you know, we've looked at this racist past and we've dealt with it, and this is what we can do. So I'm just appealing to the school committee to learn this as a learning opportunity and to take this as a step in the right direction of history. And to think of the children that are going to school and that will be going to school and how they'll be affected if this does not pass. Because we have a learning opportunity right here. And we have a chance to reach each other and make a difference and promote love and not hate and not divisiveness. So I'm just asking you to be on the right side of history and to learn from this. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee. Okay, so let's get started with public comment. I will go in the order that they appear on my screen. Remember, you have 3 minutes of respectful comment, and we will get started. Andy Morrow. Just unmute yourself, Andy.
I believe I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
You are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, the Berkshire Eagle, in our opinion, editorial of September 2nd, with the title W.E. Du Bois, a fine name for Berkshire Hills Middle School. It is true he was raised in Great Barrington and left to attend college and only returned for the burial of his wife and children. It is true he was one of the founding members of the National NAACP, but with growing radical views of communism, the founding members suspended him a couple times, and finally he was asked to leave. In 1961, he joined the Communist Party of the United States, and during the same year left America and some say his citizenship for residence in Ghana, Africa. The author also left out that Du Bois gave the eulogy of Joseph Stalin's funeral, one of the world's mass murderers that killed millions of people in forced labor camps, or that he embraced Chairman Mao, another mass murderer of his people, and the leader of the Communist Party. If you are looking to rename a middle school, you should consider one of the 58,318 veterans on the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. They supported the United States Constitution, and unlike Du Bois, they didn't turn their back on their country and support communism. Andy Morrow, Marine Corps veteran, thank you for your time.
Lori Norton Moffett.
Thank you.
You mute yourself again, Rachel.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wrote earlier, I'll try to just cover some other perspectives. I just thank you for entertaining this conversation tonight. I want to reflect that as a nation and as a community, we are living in a national moment, unlike many in our nation's history. Only very few have been as contentious as this time in our nation. And we have a national opportunity and a local opportunity to affirm that Black lives matter, that our Black brothers and sisters matter, and that their lives are valued as citizens of this nation, and that we celebrate the legacy of some of our wisest and most highly educated and leaders in this space in our country. Berkshire County is one of the areas that can acclaim some of the most admired scholars and educators and artists and theologians and musicians and creative people in our country. And we have born right in our town of Great Barrington one of the finest scholars in our nation. This is our moment to recognize Dr. Du Bois. I'd like to comment on with appreciation for the perspectives of veterans who may feel that his turn to communism later in his life was a betrayal of our nation. I would ask, is it any wonder that a nation that rejected him or would reject any of us for as long as our nation did might not turn and look for other hopes and other views and show the curiosity as a scholar and an educator that he did all his life. His writings speak for themselves. They speak so eloquently for equality, for dignity, for the value of education, and for what has been so eloquently expressed here, what our town of Great Barrington did for one of its native sons in supporting his education all the way through to his doctorate in his lifetime. It's been noted he was a founding member of the NAACP, and I want to turn a moment to my place of employment where I lead at Norman Rockwell Museum. Norman Rockwell joined the NAACP very early in the 1950s as a life member in belief of the move toward equality for all citizens in our country. And as a white ally in the last 15 years of his life, he went on to paint some of his most iconic works, taking a stand for equal education with the problem we all live with painting, taking a stand for equal housing with the New Kids in the Neighborhood painting, and taking his most graphic stand in his Murder of Mississippi painting, where the 3 civil rights workers were murdered in the town of Philadelphia, Mississippi. We celebrate Norman Rockwell today. We celebrate Edith Wharton. We celebrate Austin Riggs. We celebrate so many of the thinkers in our community in Berkshire County who paved the way in our nation with their thinking. And this is our moment to celebrate Dr. Du Bois and name our middle school the time of students' lives where their curiosity to the world opens up and the life of possibility opens up to them. It is his time, it is our time, and it is our time in the nation to take this stand. And I hope that the vote tonight will go that way. So thank you so much for listening and holding this conversation in the community.
Thank you. Bill Cook.
Hi, I just wanted to say I think this is long overdue. I was actually kind of stunned and amazed when the school was not named after Dr. Du Bois originally. I strongly encourage the board to rectify that situation tonight and vote to honor Dr. Du Bois by naming the school after him. That's all.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Bobrisky. You just have to unmute yourself.
My name is John Bobrisky, and I live on Glendale Road in West Stockbridge. Superintendent Dillon, Chairman Bannon, and school committee members, thank you for all the hard work you do for our children. First, in the spring of 2019, at the annual town meetings in each town of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District, non-binding resolutions to rename the Monument Valley Regional Middle School were voted on and approved by the small numbers of voters present. Since then, when people refer to the results, it's always said that the towns voted overwhelmingly to rename the middle school. However, when you compare the voting results to the actual registered voters in the towns, you will see that only 6.7% of the registered voters favored the renaming. The totals were 7,538 registered voters in the town, 669 people voted at the town meetings, and 504 voted for. You must realize that 6.7% of registered voters is not an overwhelming majority of the voters in the district's towns. Actually, the overwhelming majority of the registered voters did not vote for the renaming of the Monument Valley Regional Middle School that has carried this name for over 15 years and does not deserve to be renamed to suit a few individuals' desires. Second, did any of the school committee members poll the principal, teachers, and staff at Monument Valley to see what they thought of the renaming idea? Third, our school district is at a critical time in its history. What the school committee decides today will impact our children for years to come. On the one hand, we have a dedicated superintendent with staff, school committee, principals, teachers, and staffs whose priority is moving our schools towards reopening and re-educating our children. On the other hand, we have a vocal minority of voters whose priority is renaming our middle school after a man who had close associations with brutal leaders Stalin of Russia, Chairman Mao of China, was asked to leave the NAACP because of his associations with communists, later joined the American Communist Party, and finally left our country and died in Ghana. So now the members of the school committee will have to avoid the political pressure, social justice movements, and other external pressures and make the right choice. You must vote against the renaming initiative that was supported by only 6.7% of our district's towns registered voters. Fourth, if there is a renaming, who will bear the expense associated with the renaming? Once again, it will be the taxpayers and not necessarily the voters. Finally, the renaming petition drawn up by the school committee inadvertently used an outdated version of policy FF as their reference. The revised policy had been approved on December 7, 2017, but was never inserted into the district's files. Does this void the petition for renaming? Thank you.
Thank you. David Long.
Hey. Just to give a little perspective, the way I look at it is when Du Bois was born, the expected life expectancy of a black man in this country was 33 years. That essentially means that Du Bois lived 3 lifetimes. And he spent the first 2 overwhelmingly committed to making America the best it could possibly be and to try to heal the problems that were falling out of the Civil War. And then in the last part of his 3rd life, he was basically rejected by America after dedicating himself to the war effort in World War II, putting his own reputation on the line to get blacks to enroll in World War I, and basically not aligning with any political party. His voting record basically was all over the road. Whoever made the most sense got his vote. But he was very much an American, and he very much believed in not just America, but in the human spirit. In the end of the day, he was run out of America not because he became a communist. He ran out because he was basically being hounded. During the McCarthy era, he was investigated for being a communist. They actually closed that investigation and instead hounded him for his position against nuclear weapons, right? At which point he basically said, I'm done. And he signed up for the Communist Party by most accounts because, what else is he going to do? He was definitely exasperated and angry, and rightly so. But the thing is, he never gave up on his belief in the American spirit, and his move to Ghana was another attempt to try to embody that. He kept on trying right to the end. So for me, recognizing Du Bois here in his hometown is a way of basically acknowledging that, we really can't give up, and to embrace what he was able to accomplish with the start that we gave him should be an inspiration to every child that's in our community at all times. I can't think of a better model. And to not reckon with communism in America is just the same as not reckoning with our racist past and slavery. We need to reckon with all of these things, understand it in context, forgive ourselves, and move on and do better. And Du Bois, to me, is a symbol of America's attempts to try to move beyond the original sins of this country to find a better place. And that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Michael Casey.
Good evening. Thank you very much for hosting me on this. And first and foremost, like I said in my comments to you through my emails, thank you for all the hard work that you do. I know that there are many difficult challenges you're going through right now, especially with COVID-19. So not to belabor this too long, just want to say that, you know, really it doesn't take a mental giant to crack the code to see how divided this nation is at the moment. And looking back at when I first heard the schools' names and how they were going to be named originally, I thought it was just incredibly crazy to do that. But now I see the absolute genius in the persons that decided to name it after an environmental landmark so that everything would remain neutral. And neutrality is very important because I think that gives all of our children a chance to operate from a special base to which they can go to the education and learn about anybody at any place, anytime, and not have to be forced under any particular name. There are plenty of opportunities to name things within Berkshire County. There are libraries, there are areas, parks and stuff like that. But the schools, I come to appreciate that keeping something so neutral so it doesn't become an issue for everybody to become something that divides the community any further. So I go ahead and throw back to you and ask that please consider that remain neutral, keep the genius of the people that decided not to follow after anybody. And thank you very much for my time.
Thank you. Please, everyone, remember to say your name and address when you're recognized. Morgan Burns, Annie Alquist.
Hi, thank you. My name is Annie Alquist. I live at 219 South Street in Housatonic. I have 2 kids in the district, one at the elementary school and one at the middle school. And I wanted to thank the school committee for everything that you're doing at this time. And I wanted to speak in response to some of the reaction of the veterans in our community about their idea that Du Bois in some way disrespected their service. First of all, I want to thank the veterans in our community for their service. I come from a long line of veterans and public servants and public educators. So our Constitution is very important to me. Our democratic ideals and our democratic institutions are very important to me. So, but I think that it is important to know the history. So I just wanted to say that during World War I, Du Bois encouraged Black Americans to set aside their grievances about enslavement and segregation and to, quote, close ranks with their white countrymen and enlist in World War I. He took a lot of flack for that with other Black leaders at the time, but Du Bois argued that Black men should fight for democracy abroad in order to strengthen it at home. He believed that their service would help decrease racism at home because once white Americans saw the way that their Black countrymen fought, they would have to soften their hearts. Unfortunately, he was wrong, but many Black men did heed his call. When Black soldiers got to Europe, they were welcomed by the citizenry as liberators and afforded the same treatments as the white soldiers. For many Black soldiers, being in Europe was the first time that they had ever felt like normal citizens, free from the weight of oppression. But when the U.S. military leadership began to notice this, they worried that this taste of freedom would make Black soldiers expect the same kind of treatment when they returned home. So they wrote official memos to their European counterparts asking that they not treat Black soldiers too well, that they not praise them for their good work, and especially in the presence of white soldiers, and that they definitely not let them fraternize with white women. They asked this in order to not upset the delicate racial balance at home. These were official memos. Furthermore, when the war ended and Black soldiers were not treated with the same dignity and respect as Black soldiers were not treated with the same dignity and respect as white soldiers when they came home. And in fact, lynchings increased in the years after soldiers returned from World War I, and many Black soldiers were lynched in uniform. So I offer this brief, note about history to say that for whatever reason, I cannot speak for W.E.B. Du Bois, but I can only imagine that this may have contributed to the change that he made at the end of his life. And I would just hope that if you are a veteran and if you are concerned about maybe the change that Du Bois took in his life towards communism at the end, that you take this into consideration, that he fought for democratic ideals and he encouraged his countrymen to do so, and it was definitely not repaid with anything but bitterness. So I do hope that you would vote to change the name. I think he's an incredible man and he should be honored. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Karen Smith?
Karen Smith, 5 Monument Valley Road, Great Barrington. I'm here to support the name change, and it's a very personal reason. In 1998-9, after my fiance died, I went to Ghana on a 5-week trip, just ahead of Bill Clinton. I was not part of the advance team. But we get there, and I'm in Accra, Ghana, and all of a sudden, we're going to this huge park, and there's this W.E.B. Du Bois, is what I said, because I was so smart. And our guide said, no, that is W.E.B. Du Bois. And I said, oh, well, who's he? So he started giving us a tour. And all of a sudden he said, yes. And he was born in the United States. And I said, oh, well, where? And they said, Great Barrington, Massachusetts. I almost fell out of my shoes. I was like, Great Barrington, Massachusetts. I had lived in Great Barrington for 20 years and had no idea that this man was born in the town that I had lived in and worked in and taught in and volunteered in and dealt with kids in. And I think this is long overdue. And I think that Ms. Alquist and her statements about the military, I also understand there's not a human being in this meeting tonight, not one of you, and I'll put myself first, that hasn't had a period of time in my life that I haven't made some bad choices. And there were some times I made some really hard choices because of the behavior of people around me. And that Du Bois did that, God bless his heart. And I support the name change. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy.
Hello, thank you. My name is Christy Yeo. I live in Great Barrington, and I have one child who goes to Muddy Brook Elementary School. And I want to thank the school committee for opening up this conversation. And I would just say that I think if the towns have voted in favor of this name change, that it would be unfortunate if the school committee voted differently than what towns have already voted. And I understand that not everyone in each town who was able to voted on the matter, but every member has the opportunity to vote. And so I don't think we can push aside a vote that's taken place just based on everyone who didn't decide to vote on the matter. I'd also just like to say that someone had mentioned the fact that the school has a neutral name. And I think for maybe my generation and particularly my parents' generation, neutrality is kind of the way to keep the peace and keep everyone happy. And I think my generation and the generations that are coming after me are seeing that didn't work. That just not saying anything about an issue doesn't make it go away, doesn't make it better. And I think that in history, my children who will go to this school will maybe ask us, why didn't you change the name? Why did you keep silent on this issue? And I think just from my experience, looking back at the 150 years since slavery was outlawed in this nation and seeing all that has happened and wondering, why is this still an issue? Why is racial inequality still an issue after 150 years? What were my parents doing? What were my grandparents doing to help solve and heal the wounds that happened in our nation's history? And so I support the name change, and I think if out of fear we don't change the name, the next generation are going to look to us and say, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Milky.
Hi, my name is Erica Milky. I live at 13 East Street in Great Barrington. I'm actually, I was born here in Great Barrington, as was my father, as was my son. I had a similar experience as what Karen experienced. I went, born in Great Barrington, didn't know anything about Du Bois. I started to hear that he was born in Great Barrington, but didn't really know anything about him after relocating, after moving back here about 10 years ago. And 5 years ago, I was at a college reunion in the Midwest, and a friend of mine, I finished the book I had been reading on the airplane. I asked my friend for a book, and I said, oh, what about this book? She said, no, you wouldn't, it was The Souls of Black Folks. She said, you wouldn't like that. That's like really important for the sociology work that I do, but I don't know if you'd like that. And I said, wait a minute, this name sounds familiar. This guy was born in my town. And that was the first, I borrowed that book from her, and I could not believe that I needed to get that book and really learn who he was by going someplace else, not as far as Ghana as Karen did. I also wanted to speak to what Christy was just saying. You know, it's been so long since slavery ended, and the question is, what were generations prior to us doing? What they weren't doing was speaking up. I mean, I think this whole keeping the status quo, silence just helps the dominant caste maintain the status quo. It doesn't have things change. And the final thing I wanted to say was how important it is to look at historical events in the context of what was happening in history. And so similar to what Annie Alquist was saying about the history around Du Bois supporting veteran Black Americans joining the war effort in World War I, only to find that after promoting democracy abroad, they were brought home and treated as subhuman once again. And Du Bois literally saw that happen with 2 world wars. I mean, the other contextual part about that was that communism during that time in the pre-McCarthy era was offering Black Americans actual promises of being treated as equals, being able to vote, being able to have their voices heard. And that was not something that that was being offered by our capitalist system here in the States. Somebody at the town meeting, a teacher from the high school at the Great Barrington town meeting, had commented on the historical significance of the Scottsboro trials, which is what To Kill a Mockingbird was based on. And during those real historical trials, the only attorneys that were willing to defend Black Americans falsely accused were communist attorneys who came in from the outside. So I really think it's important to look at the context, and I fully support renaming the school. My son is going to be a sixth grader at the middle school, and I would be so very proud if that could happen during his time there. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I know I'm in the minority.
Just give me name and
my name, Charles Williamson, 48 Blue Hill Road, Great Barrington, Mass. I just want to say I know I'm in the minority, and I know you've already got an agenda on this. However, I want it to be said that this man was a communist and never denounced it. I am sure when Dr. Du Bois left this United States, if he had gone to Russia or China, he would not have been called comrade. Name a street or bridge after him. I think he's a very smart man, intelligent man, but leave our schools as is. I served in our service in this country, I just want to say, I don't think you're telling the kids the right thing when you name a school after a communist, when so many people have given their life for this country. Thank you.
Joe Allen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
My name is Reverend Joe Allen Forte, and I am the pastor at Macedonia Baptist Church, or co-pastor, where my father, Reverend Joseph Forte, was the pastor. I live at 28 Rossiter Street in Great Barrington. My daughter is a student at the middle school, and up until now, it has been a pleasure. I came down from Pittsfield in a crisis situation with my parents. I transferred my daughter to what was Muddy Brook Elementary, and I couldn't explain to her, no offense for the life of me, why she went to a school called Muddy Brook. But when I understood more and more about the history of this town, I started to explain to her what I didn't get. I grew up here in Great Barrington, and W.E.B. Du Bois was not a discussion that was held. I've heard a lot of discussion in terms of his background. I will not repeat that, but what I will say is this: let ye without sin cast the first stone. Because we made decisions, and we've all made decisions that we've had to live with. I think by giving this man his due just, not even while he was living, because there's an expression that says, give them the flowers while they can see them. He didn't get to see that. I just lost my mother in May. And I can tell you right now that one of the things that my parents fought hard for was to make sure that their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and now their great-great-grandchildren knew about the history of Great Barrington. We grew up here, and some of us are staying here. I would love for my child to be able to have the honor of saying, I went to a school named after W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, Dr. Du Bois wasn't a saint. We all know that. Some say he was given that role, but at the same time, all I want to say in conclusion is this: if I ran a race and I got to the end of the race and I was the winner, I think I would just be insulted if you didn't give me my trophy. And that's just where I'm at with it. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right now we have 7 people with their hands up. We have about 20 minutes to go, so let's take these 7 people and see where we go from there. Ken and Noella Salonetti.
Noelia Salonetti, 12 McCarty Road, Tyringham, Massachusetts.
So we're only taking residents first.
Okay.
That was the rule I found. And then if we have time, other people, I will recognize you if we have time. Tessa Adams.
Hello. Hi, my name is Mike Adams. I live at 38 Reed Street here in Great Barrington. Been a resident here for the past 10 years, but I've worked in this community for 20 years and have deep roots in Great Barrington via the Baptist Church through Durant, Adams, and Powers. My son attended Monument Valley. He was a star football player. It was a passion of his. I just want to tell a short story. At the end of the season, before the season ended, he quit football, and he quit football because of some issues dealing with racism in the school. And in dealing with that issue, it felt similar to the diamond in the rough of the Baptist Church. If you don't know it's there, then you don't know about it. With that being said, I think that a name change can make.
Right? Yeah.
Hello.
You're here. I might be here.
No. Someone to mute themselves, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, thank you. With that being said, we heard a lot of history about W.E.B. Du Bois. Some good, some not so good, depending on how you see it. I am 47 years old. As a youth, I've often heard from my parents who were activists as Black Panthers, that one of the things that we did when we wanted to settle ourselves is return to our roots, so the motherland of Africa. So when I hear the story of W.E.B. Du Bois and know that he went to Ghana as his last venture, I would say that you're looking for that root, to root yourself, to find who you are. That is just something we were taught as young African Americans and young Black males, that if you have the opportunity, go to Africa. It's almost a spiritual journey. But to bring it kind of back to Great Barrington, I agree with the name change. Some people are going to maybe, you know, as the youth look into the name and discover some history, but knowing that he's done a lot in this community, some are not. They're just going to say, oh, I go to W.E.B. Du Bois. And like many people who live here, never know that this is someone from the community. And really, to kind of coattail what Vanessa said earlier, and Richard put out eloquently along with everyone else, the history of this man who is a man first, before he is Black and before he is short or tall or anything else. So the name isn't going to allow you to pass the school. The name is not going to stop you from attending parent-teacher conferences or basketball games or football games. It's just not going to. What it is going to do is show respect and admiration for someone who's worked so hard in this community. Similarly to, again, looking at the Baptist church that's being revitalized now. So I am for the name change, and I do appreciate everyone's opinions on either side. However, I just don't believe that changing the name of the school, yes, it comes with some financial responsibility, but in the end, 20, 30 years, 40 years from now, Great Barrington's going to be very proud of that change. Thank you.
Thank you. John Whalen?
Thank you, Stephen. So I'm John Whalen. I live at 14 State Line Road in West Stockbridge. And I've got 4 sons. 3 of them attended schools here in the district. I do want to thank Peter and the school committee for all the work that you've been doing during these very difficult times. It's a difficult time for leadership in America and in our small communities where we're able to do, I think, a good deal more quickly. We're a country with really great aspirations and startling contradictions. And I think that Dr. Du Bois represented the very best of our American values and a long tradition of fighting for freedom and equality for all people. He fought hard in the interest of our country to uphold the rights that we've come to know as self-evident and unalienable, rights that remained unattainable, though, for people with brown and Black skin, not only throughout his entire lifetime, but they continue to be denied for many even today. And I know that as this measure has come up before and again now, many people express their concerns about the positions and the affiliations that Dr. Du Bois had. And often in letters, people talk about or declare their opposition, and they say that it's not based on race. And they want to assure people that they would do the same thing and that have the same argument for anyone, whether they were Black or white. And I do respect the concerns that are raised, and I do take folks at their word. However, Dr. Du Bois' battle is one that's inextricably connected to race. He was born just 3 years after slavery was abolished, and he died at the age of 95, just one day before Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington. And he dedicated his entire life to fighting for the rights and the privileges that mark the very best of our American values. He was concerned with upholding and protecting the very same values and our most cherished ideas about equal treatment under the law and equal access to education, including higher education, and opportunities for advancement for all people. It was here in Berkshire County, and I'm sorry, and so, you know, he fought hard for equality for African Americans that was granted, but not gained by the 14th Amendment. He came from a very different circumstance, I think, and it needs to be noted that in this contradiction, in this sort of original sin, there is something that I've never experienced in the way that I might worry about my boys or about you know, about the things that might happen to them. He was born, so it was here. I think this is a time for leadership. And it was here in Berkshire County that Elizabeth Friedman was able to find an attorney who was able to represent her interests against those of a slave owner. And it was here in South Berkshire County, the school district, that Du Bois gained his scholarly gifts and was recognized for his achievements. And naming the middle school for Dr. Du Bois would be a way of celebrating that this community has a history of standing for American values and that will continue to champion the rights of all people. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Lynn Cox.
Hi, my name is Ian Peacocks. I live in 289 Great Barrington Road, West Stockbridge. My son now is 7 years old, so most likely he will go to the school. I want to share something very personal because I'm not from here. I'm from Indonesia. I came to know Du Bois' work during the student movement back in 1998. Indonesia was under the authoritarian regime of Suharto, its military regime. So what I learned from Dr. Du Bois is about community, about movement, about making every one of us equal, and how we get that through civil movement. So when I moved to the Berkshire 10 years ago, I was surprised and like honored because, oh my God, Dr. Du Bois lived here, and I read his book long time ago in 1998. It was such a like profound like remembrance of like his legacy is not only belong to the US but to the world. We read that book under surveillance, like in disguise, like we cannot read it in public. But now I feel like this is the time for America to recognize somebody who has the ability to connect the movement throughout the world. It's not like individual things. And for me, coming from Indonesia, who understand exactly what most the veterans or military person fought for communism, I know that in person too, because Indonesia was on that part of the world where communism is being used as a scapegoat for everything. But studying ideology as an intellectual, you can move forward, and you can like it's a process of you understanding how you want to learn about ideology. It's not necessarily when you name something and someone is, you know, being communist, you then become a communist. And you cannot reduce Dr. Du Bois' legacy of so many things just because he once being member of Communist Party, because it's not that. There's so many more of him. So I am voting for renaming the school after his name, so that my son will also learn the history and the legacy and carry on the part of the value that he brings, that we all equal as a person, and we can create a new history for our generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one that says iPhone, so I don't, that leaves about half the country. So if someone knows who that is, I will recognize you. Let's go to Lily Swartz.
Steve, it might have been me. on an iPhone.
Who is that?
It's Jack Berletti, but I might be under Shannon Foster's phone. I don't know if that's in the queue.
No, you're under iPhone, if that's you.
Yeah, if I'm not under Shannon Foster, it would be under the iPhone.
Jack, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you for being
Let me do
recognized.
that on.
What's that?
Thank you. Yeah, just your address, please.
Yeah, it's Jack Berletti. I'm at 226 Grove Street in Housatonic. I have 2 kids in the district, and I'm a teacher at Muddy Brook. So I'll start as a representative of, as a student of Berkshire Hills. I hadn't learned about this man we're talking about, W.E.B. Du Bois, and I don't know if that's because it wasn't taught or if it was because I wasn't a great student. There's probably a lot of people on this line that as teachers that would recognize maybe I didn't always pay the best attention in class. But I'm more on this call to speak to the fact as an educator in response to the person that spoke earlier talking about how schools should remain neutral and perhaps we shouldn't name things after people because we don't want to take a stance. As an educator, I find a problem with that because we're charged with, some really important things. Yes, we have to teach math, and yes, we have to teach science and ELA. But for me, it's more important that we're educating our young people on what it means to be a good person, a good human, a good friend, a good partner, a good citizen. And I think when we're talking about that, we're talking about people like W.E.B. Du Bois. Sure, he made bad choices, and as educators, we talk about our mistakes and learning from our mistakes. But I think it's a misconception to think about the fact that as educators, we want to remain neutral. We want to stand up for what's right. We want to teach the young that it matters what you do in life and the choices you make. And maybe later down the line, people have another meeting and they decide that it was a mistake and we shouldn't have done this, and they'll vote and they'll have a discussion, and that's what it's all about. But I think in this moment, with what we're facing in this country, it makes a difference, and it takes a community to say Black Lives Matter, and that people like W.E.B. Du Bois deserve to be remembered. And so I'm thankful to the community and the school committee and the people that are a part of this conversation, and I hope that you guys make the right choice. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay. We have 6 hands up right now, and those will be the last 6 people to speak, and then it'll be the school committee's turn. So let's see if we can go through this. Lily Swartz.
Hi, thank you, and thanks to the whole school committee for having this conversation. So my name is Lily Swartz. Sorry, yes?
Yeah, just your address, please.
I live at 115 East Street in Great Barrington. So my husband and I moved to the area a couple years ago looking for a place to settle down. And one of the reasons that we ended up choosing Great Barrington was because of the signs honoring that this was the birthplace of Du Bois that we saw when we first drove through town. To us, it signified that this was the kind of place that had the values that were important to us and that we were hoping to foster in ourselves and find in our new community. And now I'm the parent of 2 young kids who will someday attend our public schools, not for another couple of years. One of them is about 4 weeks old, but I really hope that my kids have the experience and opportunity to fully learn about Du Bois and his legacy, in part by attending a school named after him. Through the town's festival, I have learned more and more about the ways that Du Bois fought with dedication and hope every day with every tool at his disposal, research, education, collaboration, activism, for progressive education, civil rights, economic justice, and racial equity. And to me, renaming the middle school, that is an opportunity to be a community that stands up for those values now. So it's about our past, but it's also about who we are today. Especially now as communities and institutions across the country are grappling with the longstanding and deadly impacts of systemic racism. It's more important than ever that we put our values into action and take a stand for Black lives and for the youth of our county and for justice everywhere. So as other folks have said, this is a decision that will impact young people and our entire community for decades to come. So I urge you to do the right thing and vote in favor of this name change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Salvador Schultz.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for their sharing of their views. I have to say I learned a couple of things here, so that's great. With that, I want to...
Name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said that I was on mute. Gina Schultes, Salvado Schultes, 12 Mountain Street, Great Barrington.
Thank you.
I keep hearing that, you know, this is, you know, something that this man came back and he was treated poorly. I just want to say that so were a lot of other veterans. I come from a long line of military family, Vietnam veterans, and it's a tragedy when that happens. And given the significant contribution that Du Bois has made to the civil rights movement, I absolutely believe he should be recognized in some way. His teachings, in the teachings that we do, I can say that I helped organize a basketball tournament a couple years ago that honored him for the first time. But with that, I feel that this issue is very controversial on the communist part of his life. And while I hear we all make mistakes, a wise teacher that I still look up to at Monument drilled us one semester on the subject of, do the ends justify the means? In the end, in his wisest years, Du Bois decided to leave this country for whatever reason, and he embraced communism. I've read some of his very inspiring readings, and I look forward to reading more that were suggested tonight, but I've also read his support of Stalin and other communist regimes. For that reason, I just feel that this is so controversial, and our school should be somebody where everybody feels welcome to express themselves. I can tell you I'm very proud that my graduating senior won the Voice of Democracy contest, sponsored by the VFW. And I can also tell you, as a family that is Catholic, who has views that maybe aren't in the mainstream of where we live, to the subject of the teacher who just spoke, they weren't always, their opinions weren't always welcome in the classroom at Monument. They were made to feel bad about expressing different views. And I just think that with all the controversy over this topic and this renaming, are students going to feel that way if they say, I don't support socialism? I don't support a candidate who, you know, is a socialist, who supports communism. You know, I just think it's a really sensitive issue, and I think it warrants more discussion before a decision is just made. Maybe there needs to be more education, and I can tell you that I'm open-minded, I'm willing to listen to more, but this just seems to be an issue that is so divisive and could have the opposite effect. I mean, it sounds like, from what I know, Du Bois was a great man, and there are a lot of ways that we should include that in our, I believe there's a Berkshire history class. Continue the basketball tournament, continue the work in the community. But I think a name change is something that is a financial commitment. It's a commitment that is hopefully something that's going to be made for a very long time. And I just really feel like it's too controversial at this point. And so I want to again say I've really have to stand with the VFW on this one, with my family, my family, which is father, grandfather, cousins, aunts,
who are in the military who also support this view that naming a school, public school after somebody who is embracing communism is just way too controversial at this time.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask those last speakers just to try to wrap it up as quick as you can because this is going on a little long, but I want to give everyone a chance. April.
Hi there, April Hosker, 280 Monument Valley Road. I am not for renaming the school. I too am proud of the fact that our schools are named in recognition of the beautiful area that surrounds them. I do not believe renaming a school after W.E.B. Du Bois is the way to honor him. I think the best way to honor him would be to address our curriculum and introduce a civics class, a civics curriculum, to honor this man as well as the Native Americans who were here before, as well as many others who have come from here and done great things and within our country. We need to be educated about them. When I was in school, we never learned about W.E.B. Du Bois or even many others. So we need to start from within our schools, not from the sign outside. So if something good can come of this, other than naming the school, maybe everybody can work together and we can come up with a great way to learn about everybody and their beliefs and what they've brought to this community and come from this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Sabrina Allard.
Hi, thank you. Sabrina Allard, 2 Birch Hill Road, West Stockbridge. And as I listen to everybody here, and I'm grateful to hear this, wide range of perspectives here. What we haven't heard and what I want to lift is that we have not heard youth voice here. The very youth who are going to be in these schools. And while I won't speak for them, I will say that I work alongside young people at Railroad Street Youth Project and was honored to work alongside youth who created the murals that are standing in our town right now. And, that was an 18-month deep dive into the history of Du Bois and to the questions of what will our young people think of when they really learn about his full history. What we learn from young people is that they understand the full humanity far more than we do as adults. They understand what the full humanity of people are and their flaws. And as we were learning about the full scope of Du Bois and really delved into the fact that, yes, he was a part of the Communist Party. By the way, at the age of 93, he died at the age of 95. He was in that party for 2 years. I want to lift up. They fully understood that. There was a full understanding. And this was a diverse group of about 20 to 25 different students in this area. I also want to name that I work with a group of students of color at the middle school. I'm a mother of 2 middle school students, 1 in 8th grade, 1 in 7th grade. And the conversations that we have are often conversations about heartbreak in this lack of visibility as Black people in this community, and I'm just going to name as a Black woman in this community, this being highly visible yet so invisible, that our students of color in this community walk through that every single day in this town. Yet when they see things like the mural or the newest mural that just got put up in the Rubiners wall, they actually see some sort of representation and have some sort of like hope out there that yes, they can be honored. And so I am here and in full support of renaming the middle school to the W.E.B. Du Bois School to honor representation for our young students of color, but not just them, for all of our students, because right now we are at a critical time. We are at a time right now where young people are looking at our choices. They are looking at what we are doing at this moment in history, and we cannot let them down. So I urge all of you to highly consider this renaming.
Thank you. We have 3 people left. Anyone else who tried to raise their hand, I lowered it because we said we were going an hour. We're over that time. And so I will take 3 more people who I think are 3 non-residents. And I ask if you can keep it to a minute because you've been here a while trying to speak. So I want to.
You okay?
Yeah. Asma Abbas.
Yes, hi. Good evening. Thank you for acknowledging me. I am a professor of politics and philosophy at Simon's Rock. I also have lived in Great Barrington for the first few years of my 15 years here. Now I live in Richmond. And I have had the great fortune of being educated by Simon's Rock into being a teacher in the tradition of W.B. Du Bois. I can tell you that my learning in political theory and in philosophy before I came to Simon's Rock was also completely devoid of Du Bois. But within 15 years of being here and constantly feeling like it is our responsibility to hold his legacy and to fully embody it, I have proudly carried Du Bois with me. I was a Fulbright Distinguished Chair in Eastern Europe, and there I was the Fulbright Commission empowered me to make Du Bois a centerpiece of the Masaryk University sort of Sociologist Hall of Fame in a way that people have never actually acknowledged worldwide, like what Du Bois has done for the academy, for global questions of coexistence, race, thinking about the future of the world. And I find him a remarkably, we joke about how much he wrote. If you kind of divide up, his writings over 93 years of his life, like he's probably one of the most prolific writers in history. We patterned at Simon's Rock an entire program in his legacy because he, unlike most other people we teach, actually unifies the core values of the liberal arts by combining almost everything, every method you can possibly imagine, right? I'm also an immigrant, and I also know multiple relations one can have to land and to belonging and to home. And in Du Bois, I find something really valuable that I don't think we can get to be in places without actually being able to say we are from somewhere. So I don't think that we have to judge Du Bois for his abandonment of what is seen as an abandonment, because I don't think being elsewhere is ever as simple as that, and America should know that, given that it's a settler colonial country. Anyway, I just want to support that more than anything else. Du Bois is a teacher of teachers. He has given me a sense of community within the Berkshires, and I always teach texts as a way to come closer to each other. Du Bois is one of those texts that brings me to the people I care about in this county. And I can only imagine seeing his name on a school is only such a tiny drop of that we can put in an ocean, where we can acknowledge him, but also give people the benefit of a community based in his name. Finally, the communist question, I'm a few things I pretend to be an expert on, but we can talk about this at length. So much political education, especially in this country, is necessary in order to think about what the word communist even means, what it meant to him when he left here, what it meant in the context of the Second World War. His life is so multiplicious. He lived multiple lives within his life, and that itself should be something we honor. And that is a diversity within one being that we should be able to impart to our students to emulate. So please, this is so small. This is such a small gesture to somebody so great, and we should all be proud to be in his shadow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jen Salonetti.
Maria Salonetti, Tyringham. My apologies for speaking out of turn earlier.
No, it's fine.
I wanted to speak as a youth voice. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for upholding that. I am a biracial youth, and so I bring to the stage something that hasn't been heard yet today, which is the students that are actually going to be in that building. I'm going to be a freshman at Monument Mountain next year, or this coming year, and I fully support the renaming of the middle school. For me, it's a real testament to this community and our commitment to Black Lives Matter. At this moment, the youth of your community are seeing the world that has been built up literally crumble. All the things that we rely on, all the systems that we believe in and put our support in are falling apart right now. And as youth, we don't see exactly what we're looking for. And so as leaders of this community, it is your responsibility to show us that. It's your responsibility to show up for us and to show specifically POC Black students, that you care about them. Monument has a past that it needs to contend with. All of us do. And I think naming W.E.B. Du Bois is such an integral part of working through that past. And just as a student, I really want you to think about what it means for students to be walking through those doors and have something that they can be proud of. There's a lot of discussion over the politics of this, and I think we all know we're more than our political views and our political parties. All of us are coming here with different views and different opinions. I, for one, can't vote yet. I can't pick a party. I don't have an opinion like that yet. And so I think it's essential for you to think about someone as the full person that they are and all that they represented. And so I urge you to think about the anti-racist practices that are necessary. You have to be teaching your children this now, because you talk about preparing them for the world. This is part of preparing them for this world. This is part of what we're working towards. If you don't teach anti-racist practices, you are not fully preparing your students for the world they're going to be stepping into. So I ask that you think of this as a small step towards that, and that just leads to greater things. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Last, Samar.
Hey everybody, thank you for the chance to speak. My name is Samar Nihotri. I'm a student at Simon's Rock. I'm currently a junior. I've been in the United States and at Simon's Rock and in Great Barrington for the last 2 years. Over my time here, I've volunteered at countless places, including BRCA, including working at the community center, I've actually volunteered with Flying Cloud, and I've taught classes at Muddy Brook. I am aware of the students that we are speaking of. I have worked with them, I've taught them, and I have also spent 2 years understanding American racial issues from the lens of an outsider, from someone who has neither had the Black or the white experience. And to speak my heart, in my understanding, America has lens to do to attain racial equality in this country. I think that just naming a school after a Black leader fails at achieving what the goal of racial equality is. I feel that there are a lot more steps to follow after that, and just naming a school would be one step in the right direction, a very small one, but certainly in the right direction. And to people who speak against this, I'd just say that's very thinly veiled racism. There are countless other Americans who are white and have supported controversial ideals. I sure hope, if you don't like Du Bois for being a communist, I sure hope you don't write a Ford, because Henry Ford was a super Nazi guy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion closed public hearing.
Second. Do I have a second? So I have a motion by Sean, a second by Bill.
Can anyone else speak?
No, we're closing the public hearing. We've gone our time limit. Roll call vote, Molly?
Yes.
Jason?
Aye.
Sean?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Andy?
Aye.
Ann?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And yes. So public hearing is closed. Just want to remind everyone who's still on the line, which is still 220 people, that we received countless numbers of emails and petitions that we've all read. And those are part of what we've used to make our final decision. Those will be available through a Google Drive on site if you want to look at them. So let's get started. We have a motion and we have a second. School committee discussion.
Well, can I just start by saying this is probably the most valuable conversation in 6 years of my time on this committee. I'm honestly moved by the breadth and thoughtfulness of everyone who spoke, and this recording is a valuable document. And I actually wish that people could see. I mean, speaking as an archivist, this will be a valuable document. So, thank you, everyone.
My daughter would agree with you, Andy. She's an archivist too.
Good on you.
Who else from the school committee would like to speak?
This is Diane Singer.
Yes.
I would like to thank all of the students and previous students who wrote us letters and also were very honest about their experiences with racism at the schools. It was not something that I was quite as aware of as I am now, and I'm ashamed, and I am hoping that the naming of the school can also be coupled with a re-education about the civil rights in any period of history where people were treated differently or badly because of their differences. And I just want to say thank you for all of those kids and young people who wrote to us.
Thank you, Diane. Who else would like to speak?
I would, Steve.
Go ahead, Bill.
My reasoning for voting the way I'm going to vote is very personal, and I'm going to explain it because it has a lot to do with my adopted father. So bear with me. I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old. My adopted parents lived in New York City. My mother was born in New York City. She was a clerk and a housewife. My father was born in Abilene, Texas. And at 18, he had volunteered for World War I. He was wounded in the Battle of the Argonne in France, received a Purple Heart. In World War II, he wanted to fight, but he was too old, so he went to Canada, where he was named a major. He came to New York City in the early 1930s, and over the years became a very well-known sole press agent for a company that he helped form called the Playwrights Company, made up of playwrights Maxwell Anderson, Robert Sherwood, who became the speechwriter for FDR, Elmer Rice, as well as being the sole publicity person on the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. His clients included, and some of these names for those of you who are my age and a little older will know, his clients included Helen Hayes, Raymond Massey, Audrey Hepburn, Ethel Merman. He produced over 200 shows and helped publicize them. Playwrights, Abe Lincoln in Illinois, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Tea and Sympathy. And he commuted from New York City to Sheffield on weekends. And he always was getting me to read. And I can remember that about the age of 11, he started having me read the Sunday editions of the New York Times, the Herald Tribune, and the Daily News. And he would quiz me on the editorials and what I thought of them and did I understand them. He had written a book on the year 1954 that he gave me, and he hadn't written a book. He wrote an article on it, on Audrey Hepburn, and it had a section on the Army McCarthy hearings, and I knew nothing about Joe McCarthy at that age. And I can remember asking him about it, and he then went into it more, especially the methods that McCarthy used to get people to confess or to lose their jobs using, he said the methods were blacklisting, innuendo, lies, using the justification that the ends justify the means. And he saw this in Broadway, and it affected him. He didn't like what he saw. He saw the Hollywood blacklist, and nobody talked about it, but it was there in Broadway too. And he always told me that I should judge people on their abilities to do their job, not on their political views or what would be called today their sexual orientation or their skin color. He died of cancer in April of 1961, and we went down to New York, and I can very vaguely remember the memorial service, but what I do remember that stands out to this day in my mind was two African-American men who came up to me after the service and asked me, "You're Bill Fields Jr., aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "You should be very proud of having your father's name because he was a fair and a good person." And they then told me of the many people that he helped get jobs in both the theater and the circus without ever asking or caring about their political orientation or sexual orientation or their skin color. So I'd like to think that my vote tonight reflects what those two men told me about my adopted father and what I learned about him as I grew up from both my mother and others who knew him well. I know that he would see William W.E.B. Du Bois in the same light that he saw many others that he helped during his long career in both the theater and the circus. He would be proud of my vote tonight.
Thank you, Bill. By the way, we didn't have to indulge ourselves. That was terrific. Anyone else from the school committee wants to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
John, go ahead.
This to me has been pretty amazing. I have gotten more emails and communication about this issue in the last week and a half than we have about opening schools and how we're going to do that, which to me is mind-boggling. I think that, you know, we look back at our, I have little notes over here. So we look back at the previous votes that took place at town meetings. And yes, there was 6.7%, you know, voting for the school board, but there's 2.2 voting against it.
What's civil?
What?
Someone just needs that.
I'm really not sure why we're still afraid of a communist threat in this country. That's the biggest argument that I've heard tonight, that Du Bois was a communist. Well, you know, I think we have gotten over that at this point. As far as somebody mentioned there was not a youth voice, I'm going to say my daughter last year won the W.E.B. Du Bois Academic Excellence Award at Muddy Brook. At this point, I think I would like to just say that we need to accept this motion and get on with it.
Thank you, Sean. Jason.
Thank you. I'm going to stop my video just in hopes that it'll improve my audio, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So my feeling is it's our job as a school committee to represent the people. When there's no clear mandate, like data, figures, etc., then the people, they entrust us to use our judgment to make decisions. This case, however, makes it very easy for us to reflect the will of the people. I mean, all three towns at their town meeting last year overwhelmingly voted to change the name. And some have rightly said that, you know, the number of people at these town meetings were just a small percentage of the voting populace. But I firmly believe that if this question was on the ballot this fall with, you know, 30, 40, hopefully even 50% of the voters were asked, or even if, you know, 100% were polled, that the sentiment of last year's town meeting would remain the same. Actually, I think it would be even a greater amount that would vote for this change. So, you know, I just feel as a school committee, you know, we must follow the will of the people, and it's our duty to reflect that. And I think we have a pretty clear mandate regarding that. The other thing I wanted to mention was that there is a concern that I've had about this issue since the start. And it is that this is a regional school district with three different towns. It's not just the Great Barrington School District. And since Great Barrington is significantly bigger, it stands to reason that when it comes to honoring one of their favorite sons or daughters, they will be able to mobilize a lot more people, have greater financial resources, and have a more political capital to use. But both Stockbridge and West Stockbridge, you know, they technically can, you know, do the same thing, but it's going to take a lot more effort, and, you know, the finished product might not be as polished as Great Barrington's can make it. But I just want to make it clear that if, when, because I know in Stockbridge there is bunch of people gathering support to try to rename one of the schools after Elizabeth Freeman, who, for those of us who went to the Plain School, were taught that she was born a slave, mom back in the 1700s, and was the first African American to successfully sue for her freedom in Massachusetts. She settled in Stockbridge, bought a house with her daughter, and was a very important part of the community, and was really a hero to all those people from Stockbridge. So I just want to make sure that it's known that when if and when the other two towns do come forward with their favorite son or daughter to honor, that the voters of all three towns, as well as this committee, give the same kind of consideration that they deserve. And I know they will. I mean, I trust the voters, and I especially trust the school committee. I just want it out there to when Stockbridge or West Stockbridge comes with these kind of requests, that we're open and willing to listen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Anyone else on the school committee? Ian,
yeah.
I think you were.
As many of you know, I've raised two African-American boys going through these schools, and I was actually thrilled when I came to live in Great Barrington that I was coming to the home or the birthplace of W.E.B. Du Bois, because I had heard of him growing up. I don't know why, but certainly I was very thrilled to be coming here. I also lived in Ghana for 3 years as a Peace Corps volunteer, where Du Bois is very, very much honored. And I can very much understand why he went there in his old age, when he was welcomed there with open arms and treated as a senior figure who was very, very respected. The respect at that point he was not getting in the United States. So I'm very thrilled to be able to vote to change the name of our middle school to honor W.E.B. Du Bois. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Anyone else from the school committee? Okay, I'm gonna, if you would just indulge me, I put stuff down on paper because it's been a long day, a long evening, and I want to make sure I got everything. And I respect what Glenn said. I'm not bringing up past history, but I just want to go over what got us here. I'm the only member of the school committee who participated 15 years ago in the naming of our two new schools. As a matter of fact, I was also the chair of that school committee and a member of the school building committee for Bois Regional Elementary School, Monument Valley Regional Middle School. We've all received an email from building committee co-chair at that time, Richard Kuhn, outlining the process that was being used for naming two schools. Dick was also a longtime, highly respected school committee member, and to quote from his email, when the construction of the new buildings was nearly complete, the school committee and school building committee held a joint meeting to officially name the new schools. The public and students were asked to submit names for consideration. Before any names were considered, the joint meeting agreed that the new schools were for educational purpose and should not be used to memorialize any individual or individuals. Names agreed upon were based on physical location of the buildings and their natural surroundings. I understand and support the desire to name the building after Du Bois. He was born in Great Barrington, was the first African American to earn a doctorate at Harvard. He was one of the founders of the NAACP in 1909. There is no doubt that Great Barrington should be proud of their native son, who was an accomplished author, sociologist, civil rights activist, and so much more. We also have other renowned people referring to this, who have added to the historical fabric of our three communities, such as Rockwell, Stanley, French, Sedgwick, just to name a few. When these schools were named, and the decision to not name the schools after an individual was made before the Du Bois name was ever brought forward. An argument can be made that we are a regional school district representing the three towns, and Du Bois' roots were in Great Barrington. One can also say that the decision to name the schools after their geographical location was very successful. At the time, many people were skeptical of the agreed upon names. I think that passage of time has shown that to be a more favorable decision. What I really want to say is during a time when there's so much anger and controversy, the naming of a school should be a joyous occasion, not another reason to divide our community. However we vote this evening, I only ask that we respect the decision of the school committee. During a pandemic, in a time where our country is so divided, I hope our community rises above the national turmoil. We as a district need to pull put all of our time and energy into educating our students during an unprecedented pandemic. We cannot fail our youth. We will not fail our youth. We have an exceptional staff who are working tremendously hard to find a way to provide our usual quality education. Let's put our energy into this massive task. In this extraordinary time of socioeconomic despair, health crisis, and personal upheaval, our community needs to be a symbol of courage, tenacity, strength, and compassion. I accept the direction and the will of the town meeting vote, and I support this motion. Roll call vote. Molly,
Yes.
Jason,
Aye.
Sean,
Absolutely.
Diane,
Yes.
Andy,
Aye, with pleasure.
Ann,
Strongly, yes.
Bill,
Bill, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes.
thank you. Rich,
A proud yes.
and yes to make it unanimous for all 9 members of the school committee. With that being done, by unanimous consent, I declare us adjourned. Thank you,
very much, everyone.
It was a historic meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good news! We got the champagne.
Yes. Give me my sweatshirt.
More tears, more tears, more tears.
Yes. Let me go get my baby sweatshirt.
Really great news.
Oh my
Alex!
Gwen Van Zant, excellent work for a long period of time. You should be very proud of yourself. Very proud of yourself. And Vanessa LeGrand, you're better spoken than I ever thought I'd hear you, but you did great, honey. I love you, my mentor.
Congratulations, everyone.
You go, girls.
Go, Gwendolyn.
Thank you, Jesus.
Vote blue.
Good going, Gwen.
Nice job. Thanks, everyone.
Good going community.
Community.
Yeah.
Community.
Vanessa.
Alex. Woo.
Oh, I love you all. I love you all.
Yes.
I'll hug and kiss you when I get a chance.
Yeah, right.
This is our virtual party, Brianna.
Right.
Virtual party.
I may cry on you a little bit too.
Community, yes. Yes. Take care of
Yes. I want to go back to school now.
Yeah, right.
Get it, girl.
Sweatshirt.
Yes.
I'm gonna get all the swag.
Yeah, hi Lee. That was amazing. Woo.
And I'm calling my niece, Dr. Tasha Alston,
Yes.
who got her PhD,
Yes.
knowing that if Du Bois could do it then, she could damn well do it now. And the fact that she lost her father today,
Yes.
this is going to make her so happy.
Good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. You got to keep moving forward.
Yes,
Moving forward.
Yes. Yes. This was exciting.
You did a good job.
Hi, everyone. So exciting.
You all did. Be blessed. I'm making calls.
Finally.
Thank you, Glenn.
Now let's change Muddy Brook to Elizabeth Freeman School. Let's go. Elizabeth Freeman School.
I did not have an opportunity to speak, but I do want to thank everybody because this was a very historic and important
Yes.
Yes.
decision tonight. And this moves our country, or not. I don't even care about the country. I care about our community.
Yeah.
And this moves our community in the direction that we need to go to or go to. So I thank everybody for your devotion, your tenacity, your endurance, and your persistence that this had to happen. And as the president of the Berkshire County chapter of the NAACP, this means so much to me because Du Bois was a co-founding member. And the fact that the NAACP still exists today shows the importance of his vision and his work. And when people turn around and say, well, the NAACP denounced him and the NAACP did this, he never lost his confidence in his devotion to the NAACP. And the fact that today, the crisis, the magazine that Du Bois created, is still being published. So I thank all of you. And I don't know if you realize the magnitude and the importance of what you did tonight. But I truly do, and my hat is off to Gwendolyn and to her entire committee. This is what moves us forward. And what Great Barrington proved tonight, at least the school committee proved tonight, truly, Black lives do matter. And thank you.
Thank
all
you,
of you.
Dennis. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whew.
Night, everyone. Well done.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. I don't want to hang up. I don't want to hang up.
Well said, Dennis.
Yeah, very well said. Now I get to go to sleep. I haven't gone to sleep since yesterday. It's good.
Yeah, go to bed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Night. Good night.
Good night, bye.
Oh, Ellie's on.
Bye.